Good afternoon, Colorado. Good afternoon, people listening outside of Colorado. This is K4CO, and I am Josh, your president here, and sitting down here with Kev, who just got done with Kev on the radio. How'd that go?
Hello again.
Hello
Great.
again.
Another great afternoon.
Oh, yeah. Gotta love it. So we have a lot of great artists to choose from. Well, we're back again in the studio, and we have another wonderful guest. Earlier on, it was pet adoption, which was very awesome. Definitely check them out. That is on our social media platforms. And if you are listening in the radio station or in your car on the app, definitely keep doing so. Let people in. Nice and relaxed, listen to us. But if you can switch over to our social media platforms, K4CO Radio, Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, Instagram, all the fun stuff.
All that stuff.
Yeah. And look at our beautiful faces. So we are sitting here with Kathi Miracle. How are you today?
I'm good. Thank you for having me today.
Yeah, thank you for coming in. You are the owner of LearningRx in Highlands Ranch. Everybody can go to learningrx.com/Highlands Ranch, hyphen in between Highlands and Ranch. 303-955-2959. Tell us a little bit about you and a little bit about LearningRx and how you got involved.
Okay. Well, I am a Colorado native. I don't meet very many Colorado natives anymore. I grew up in the Westminster area. I got a double bachelor's degree in speech pathology, audiology, and a master's in gerontology, all from the University of Northern Colorado in Greeley. So never really left Colorado. I started LearningRx in 2023. I had spent a career working in senior living, and I had worked a lot with people with dementia and seeing cognitive skills decline. And about 10 years ago, was introduced to a scientific study where strengthening cognitive skills and going through nutrition and different things actually helped delay the progression of dementia without the use of medication. So I started getting really interested in cognitive exercising, brain training. And in 2022, I stumbled across LearningRx. And LearningRx is the number one-on-one brain training company in the world. Their world headquarters are in Colorado Springs, and they are in 43 countries. And so they are the largest one-on-one brain training. And when I started looking at their scientific research and everything they do, and that they could strengthen and maintain cognitive skills at a very young age, I thought, I've got to be a part of this. I have to be a part of helping people change their lives at earlier ages or protect cognitive skills so that they might be able to avoid a dementia diagnosis or delay the progression of dementia, or in some cases even reverse cognitive decline. So I absolutely wanted to be a part of that.
That's possible to reverse it.
In early stages.
In
very early stages.
Wow.
If you follow a lifestyle program, there's a lot that goes into a lifestyle program, and brain training is one component of that. But I have seen people where they get a certain score on a cognitive assessment through their neurologist's office, and then when going back after implementing all 6 components of a program, they start getting better on those cognitive assessments, which is not typical that you see. Doctors don't typically see that. They just typically see someone continuing to decline.
Right. No, and that makes sense. That's what I thought, basically, right away.
Right.
And so in school, really, you've always been interested in the brain.
I've always been interested. Back at a young age, I wondered how people got Alzheimer's. Like, what happens when people get Alzheimer's? So while I was getting my master's degree in gerontology, I specialized in dementia and elder abuse. But I worked as a CNA in a nursing home on an Alzheimer's unit in Greeley. And so it was always very interesting why some people got it and some people didn't, and why some people progressed faster and why some people didn't. And so it was, I just became very intrigued with it in my early 20s, and it just became a passion for me over my career.
My aunt up in Minnesota, she developed Alzheimer's, and got to that point where didn't know anybody, didn't know her family, stuff like that. I remember seeing a documentary called Alive Inside, where you've seen that.
Oh, absolutely. In fact, a company that I worked with, our owners brought the owner of the gentleman who did that documentary into the company. And so we were certified in the Alive Inside program.
Wow. Very cool.
He's an amazing individual, and it's a great documentary.
It is. Definitely check it out there. And what it talks about actually is music. which
Yep.
is great. So even people who don't know their family, don't know, anything, they can still remember lyrics. They can still remember songs. They can, music is just so powerful.
It's amazing. I mean, we used to see people. We had a lady who was non-communicative, but we start singing "Amazing Grace," and she could sing every word of that song very loudly. The other thing music was very helpful with is people who had difficulty walking. You put on music to a certain beat, and they'll walk to the beat of the music. You turn it off, and they struggle with walking again. And so we would use that as we were walking with individuals from their room down to a dining hall or to activity room because it made it safer for them to walk as they walked to the beat of the music.
Wow. That's amazing.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, even animals react to music.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it just goes a long way. Now, this is such a great program. When I first looked at it, I thought it was just tutoring for kids, for kids with ADHD. You do deal with a lot of that as well.
We do.
I mean, back when we were growing up, I certainly had something. Learning disability of some sort or ADHD, but of course that wasn't a thing back then.
Right.
My parents just called it me not applying myself.
Basically.
So this is an incredible program. As a child, how does it? What are the huge differences other than the obvious ones as far as training a child or an adult?
So children learn differently than we learn as adults. Children learn through experience, and they learn through repetitive, actions. The brain doesn't really fully develop until we're about 25 years old. Unfortunately, it starts breaking down when we're about 39 years old. So there's about 15 years of peak on us with it. And there's a lot of reasons why we start having challenges as we get older, which is another topic. But with children, we approach things a little bit differently. We may do things slower with them than we do with adults, unless it's an adult who's had a stroke or a traumatic brain injury. So it really all starts with what are their cognitive skills is really what we look at. I've actually, my brother, who's 70 years old, he actually has stronger cognitive skills than my sister or I. And, we're a lot younger than him. And my younger sister won't do a test now because she doesn't want to know. So age really doesn't affect cognitive skills to some degree. Like a gentleman who's 72 years old, his skills were stronger than the 17-year-old who came into our building. So from a cognitive standpoint, cognitive skills get affected by concussions, by genetics, by a lot of things. So from a child to an adult, we just know that children learn through experience, and the more that they can touch and see and feel helps them. With adults, they learn more through logical processing and experience and explanations. So the programs, whether we're training a child or training an adult, we approach it from what they're going to best understand in the beginning, and then we dive in and just focus on targeting the weaker skills to strengthen those.
And you do brain injuries too. So, what are like some of the challenges between working with brain injuries as opposed to, say, dementia?
It all comes down to what part of the brain is damaged. So what we know is people who experience dementia, typically what's affected initially is their auditory processing, it is their auditory memory, and it is their short-term memory. Those are the things that are initially is a challenge. It's also why, I hear doctors all the time say get your hearing checked, is because when somebody's auditory processing, auditory memory, and short-term memory are low, they are at higher risk for developing dementia. Hearing aids actually just amplify the sound. It doesn't strengthen the cognitive skill. So yes, it's important to get your hearing checked. However, you also want to get those cognitive skills checked. When it comes to somebody who's had a traumatic brain injury, typically what we see is that their processing speed has been affected, their logic and reasoning has been affected, their attention skills have been affected. And so it all depends on what part of the brain was damaged, because somebody who's in a car accident might differ from somebody who was in a skiing accident. And so we want to look at what part of the brain was damaged, and then again, we customize our program to go in and target the lower skills to strengthen those.
When you say getting your cognitive skills tested, what goes into that? What does that look like?
So we do a brain skill assessment is what we do, and it takes about 30 to 40 minutes to go through, and then it takes a couple of days to get the results back, and then we sit down and go through the results. a lot of kids will come in and ask me if I'm going to stick anything to their head, and I'm like, no. And that's usually a child who's gone through neurofeedback or an adult who's gone through neurofeedback. I get asked, so I say, no, I'm not going to stick anything to your head. We do different exercises, and there's about 6 different things that we do exercise-wise, asking them questions, looking at pictures, having them do some things speed-wise, and then takes a couple of days, and then we sit down, and it takes about 45 minutes to go through the results. So we educate people on the difference. What is the difference between a knowledge bank and your cognitive skills? So your knowledge bank is really what we put information into when we're learning in school or learning a new job. It's what we pull from when we're trying to write a report or take a test or a quiz. The challenge becomes is that if one or more of your cognitive skills are weak or not working, you're never going to get knowledge into the knowledge bank to begin with. And so thus there is nothing to pull from. And that's why individuals struggle, whether it's a child struggling in school or an adult who's struggling in work or somebody who's struggling after a head injury or a stroke.
And when you say that bank, that's like long-term memory, right?
Yeah, your knowledge bank is your long-term. It's like your filing cabinet. If you look at like a filing cabinet, you're filing information away and you're pulling from it. That might be short-term memory. That might be auditory memory or visual memory, but most of the time it's long-term memory.
Gotcha. And so anybody can really contact you for just a test. I mean, even if they're a little bit older in life or they want to make sure, they're getting slow. I slow down right now. So, but they just want to make sure that everything is working well.
Correct. Right.
But then also, I mean, how important is cognitive exercises throughout life to maintain?
They're very important, actually. When I talk about a lifestyle program that protects and maintains cognitive health, there's 6 components of that. So nutrition is one of them, hydration, sleep, socialization, getting oxygenated blood to the brain, and of course, cognitive exercising or brain training. Those are the 6 things. If you combine them and do them consistently, you can maintain cognitive strength. And in some circumstances, like I said, you can reverse cognitive decline if you're in early stages of cognitive decline. And so when we look at, does everybody eat the way they should? No, they don't.
Of course not.
Our society is filled with fast food and sugary items. And so sugar is one of the worst things we can do for our brain. Even when you look at diet drinks, I mean, I tell somebody, drink those, leaded, not the unleaded, because sweeteners is really bad for the brain as well. We don't drink as much water as we should. And when we drink caffeine dehydrates the body. So you should balance that out so people don't get enough hydration. And sleep is another important factor where it's not the quantity of sleep, it's the quality of sleep. When the brain goes into deep REM quality sleep, it actually goes through like a car wash and it flushes all the buildup and toxins from that day. When you don't get the sleep, you don't get that car wash. The brain doesn't go through the car wash, so it keeps building on each other and it can become problematic. And sleep deprivation actually causes the brain to shrink. And so then it makes it more difficult for the brain to function the way it should. So there's a lot of things we don't do that we should do, on a regular basis. When you talk about our brain skill assessment, people can do a brain skill assessment and never do a program, but it gives them a lot of really good information. Of course, we show them by doing a program how much beneficial. The goal is to always have all cognitive skills above the 50th percentile.
Above a 50th, okay.
Yeah. We see people who come in fact, I had a 13-year-old who came in and his auditory processing was at a 1 and his auditory memory was probably, I think, is at a 5 or 6. So anything mom and dad said or teacher said, he didn't hear, the brain didn't capture, and he didn't remember, which was pulling down his short-term memory. So how much do you think he hated school?
A lot.
Yeah. He went through our program and he was bouncing off the walls when he graduated. And his dad told me a month into high school, his freshman year of high school, and there were no missing assignments, which was awesome. It was a pretty cool thing to see.
That is pretty cool. So this is really something that every age can benefit from.
Yeah, we jokingly say any brain at any age could benefit from a LearningRx program. Personally, my youngest student has been 6 years old at LearningRx, and my oldest student has been 82. LearningRx worldwide, I believe the youngest student has been 3, and their oldest student has been 103.
Whoa.
So, yeah.
Well, good for them.
Yeah.
I mean, that's pretty impressive for being 88 to involve yourself in something
Oh,
something
yeah.
like that.
Well, and I know I have an uncle who just celebrated his 90th birthday, and he is sharp. He is really, really sharp. So, I mean, he keeps his mind busy, which I
Right.
think is huge.
Yeah, it is huge. It's and throughout my time in senior living, you could definitely see. I mean, my youngest person I ever took care of, who was had a dementia diagnosis, was 52 years old. She had early onset dementia, and at the time, I was in my 40s, and I remember thinking, "Oh my gosh, that's really young." And then when I hit 52, I just was like, this really is young. And then my oldest person who I took care of, who was still very cognitively alert, was 102,
Oh, my
and
gosh.
just sharp as a tack.
Wow.
How do you help identify the strengths and weaknesses of someone's brain?
Through the brain skill assessment. Like I said, we have them do a few different exercises. We do a speed test in there, a couple of speed tests in there. And then I enter data into a software program, and it gives me a report. And we look at auditory memory, auditory processing, auditory memory, visual processing, visual memory, short-term memory, logic and reasoning, attention. So we look at all of those different skills, and it comes out in a report that I sit down and go through with families, whether those are parents or the adult individual. And so we help them understand when this cognitive skill is weak. These are some of the challenges you might encounter. Much like so when children have a difficulty with reading is an auditory skill before it's a visual skill. So when I hear parents telling me up front, well, they're below their grade level, they don't read very well, they don't like to read, I can almost anticipate that their auditory processing and auditory memory are going to be low. And usually that's what the case is. And so when we can identify what those skills look like, then we can put together and customize a plan saying, this is how many weeks we believe, or this is how many sessions we think we can get you through, and we can get those cognitive skills up above the 50th percentile.
I'm glad that you went back to that auditory thing because, it's like, for example, with that child who scored extremely low on it, what types of things, I'm sure you don't know what did for this particular person, but what types of things, what can cause that, first of all, and then what strategies are used to bring that up again?
So one thing, and this is not, and I'm not a doctor. I always tell people, I'm not a doctor, I'm not a nurse, so this is stuff that I had learned. But because I had my degree in speech pathology and audiology, my bachelor's degree, and I have really great friends in that world still, and audiologists, at times, if someone has had ear infections or chronic ear infections, if you think about when children have those, it's also about the same time they're learning language, they're learning sounds, they're learning language. So if you put your head underneath the water and someone tried talking to you, what does that sound like? Right? You would have difficulty understanding what the message was or being able to pick up on those details of the message. Well, it's the same for a child who's had ear infections and they can't hear during that time frame when it's important to learn language. So is that always the cause? No, that's not always the cause. I think that high fevers possibly could cause damage with cognitive skills. Clearly, concussions. We have so many kids in sports nowadays,
Right.
and soccer players actually sustain more concussions than football players do.
Soccer players do?
Soccer players do, yeah. You wouldn't think that
No.
because when you watch football and you watch them go after each other and tackle, right, you would think that they sustain them. They may sustain more severe head concussions, but soccer players sustain quantity. They have a higher level of concussions. But of all sports, I mean, we've had our kids were in baseball and volleyball, and they got concussions from those sports because of being hit with the ball or being in the wrong place or whatever. And I always say, too, because years ago, I mean, there was a huge lawsuit in the NFL because of concussions, right?
Yep, I remember that.
Yep. And so the NFL made a lot of changes with the helmet. There's now rules that you cannot tackle head on or you'll get fined. And so they really tried to do a lot of things to prevent that. And I have people all the time who say, we're wearing a helmet when we're biking or we're wearing a helmet. And headgear is always important, and I always encourage it. But I also always remind people that there is a space between the brain and the skull. So it doesn't matter how much your head is being protected. If you are knocked around, the brain is still going to get jostled around, and it can get bruised. It can, even one mild concussion already can start affecting how the brain is communicating from the left to the right side.
1 mile?
One mild concussion.
Okay,
No. One mild
One
concussion.
mild concussion,
Yeah. So
right.
when you have people who have multiple concussions and they start building on each other, then it's going to be more difficult for the brain to process information.
Yeah, and you're right. The equipment has come a long way.
Yep.
That's for sure. But like you said, there's still
that
still
space.
that's not.
Yeah, I do
Exactly.
a demonstration, visually, where I will put an egg in a jar, and I will say, if you just shake it once, what happens to the egg? If you shake it again, what happens? And are you going to be able to put that egg back together? No, you're not. So when an area of the brain dies, it dies. I mean, what happens, though, through neuroplasticity is the brain's ability to create new neural pathways, and that will happen up until you take your final breath. Neuroplasticity doesn't stop happening. So it's why someone who's had a stroke and can't walk or talk, they learn to do it again, is because of the brain is creating those new neural pathways in the brain. And then those pathways can be strengthened. So myelin is what wraps around every neural pathway, and that's what starts breaking down in our late 30s and early 40s. That's myelin, and the thinner it is and the more damaged it is, the harder it is for the brain to send a message from point A to point B. The thicker it is, the faster the message goes. So it's kind of like if you were driving your car across a bridge and the bridge was washed out or had potholes in it, you're going to drive that car a lot more carefully across that bridge, probably at a slower pace, so your car doesn't get damaged. Or you come up on a new bridge, a brand new bridge, you're going to be able to drive that car a lot faster across it.
Oh, yeah. You're going to do the Autobahn on
You're
that.
going to do the Autobahn, yeah. So it's the same thing in the brain. When the myelin sheath starts breaking down and becomes thinner or damaged, the brain is going to send the message slower in the brain versus if it's got a lot of myelin wrapped around it. Myelin also doesn't stop growing until you take your final breath, and what helps myelin grow is intense repetitive exercises, and that's what we do at LearningRx, is intense repetitive exercises.
If you're just tuning in on the radio, we're interviewing Kathi Miracle. She's the owner of LearningRx in Highlands Ranch, basically serving Denver Metro all the way down to Castle Rock. And phone number is 303-955-2959. With LearningRx, especially when it comes to kids, how much of school, say, kids who are not doing well in school, how much of it is just solved through simple cognitive training, would you say?
Well, every child is different, and every brain is different too. So we start with the brain skill assessment, and
Right.
it may be someone who needs a 12-week program. It may be somebody who needs a 12-month program. It all depends on where we start with. We have seen throughout LearningRx that kids go from D's and F's to A's and B's. We actually, when my husband and I were doing our discovery on whether we were going to purchase LearningRx, we had the opportunity to talk to a family, and mom and dad said the little boy was about, I think, 12 years old, and the parents said, well, if you ask us how LearningRx helped, he did much better in school. He by the time he was finished with this program, he would get his homework done before we even got home. He took the initiative. He had more confidence. If you want to ask him how LearningRx helped him, he'll tell you he became a better hockey player because he could process the puck on the ice a lot faster and defend the goal. And his hockey team went on to win a championship game that year. And so even sports players are able to process things on the field a lot faster
Right.
because we're strengthening those cognitive skills. So we see a lot of benefits in the program. We see people. I think the biggest thing I see personally is confidence. We see students of all ages walking in, and they're frustrated, they're overwhelmed, they feel beat up, especially if it's a child who has had teachers saying you've got missing assignments. You have mom and dad saying you've got missing assignments. They feel like they're trying their best, but they're not. And so they just walk in very deflated and defeated. And we can see it in their body language. We can see it in their facial expressions, their tone of voice. And by the time they finish a program, they're just bouncing off the walls. They become an entirely different person because they feel like they're going to go out and conquer the world now because we've helped them achieve so much. And they graduate through the different exercises we do. They see themselves getting better because they see the challenge becoming harder and harder and harder. And so then they see them passing their levels, and we have a graph that they get to see. So they see this graph getting filled in, and then we hear it from home, like, we only had to tell them once to take out the trash, not 3 times. Or, the child who does get all his homework done before mom and dad gets home. And that's a huge deal. Even we worked with a child, a 9-year-old autistic child, and mom told us at one point, almost through the program, where they went from 3 hours of homework at night to 1 hour of homework at night, and getting ready and up and out the door in the morning. There were no longer meltdowns to get out the door. I mean, that's a huge difference in a family's life when, 3 hours of homework to 1 hour of homework and no meltdowns getting out the door. I mean, that's a huge difference. So it doesn't just affect the child's life, it affects the entire family's life.
Yeah, that just opens up a whole new world.
Yes, it does.
For a student that's just stuck in that shell of...
It does. And too, I mean, I want to say we have people who come to us who are not struggling. I mean, we had a student who wanted to pass the LSAT on the first time, the entrance into law school. And he came in and went through a program and ended up passing on the first time. That was his goal. We had an adult student who wanted to pass his, he was becoming an electrician. He wanted to pass that test on the first time because other tests like he was doing, it took him 2 or 3 tries. So he went through the program and was so excited when he sent me a text message that he passed on the first time. We have straight A students who just want to get a better score on an ACT or SAT so they can get into a better college or get a better scholarship. So while we do work with a lot of people who struggle and who've had challenges in the brain, it also helps people just become a better them and try to achieve some higher goals that they want.
Just kind of like going to a physical trainer when you just want to focus on a few things. Same thing here.
Correct.
Correct. What do you think are some of the biggest challenges, not only of what you do, but what people going through this have to face?
So I think one of the biggest challenges I face currently is nobody knows what brain training is. I
don't.
Didn't.
Exactly.
Yeah. And we do get confused as being a tutor too. And
right.
and tutoring companies and us are not competition. A lot of times students need us first, and then once we get them caught up, a tutor will get them caught up in school then and get them all through everything. So we really complement each other from a service standpoint. Just like neurofeedback, we complement each other in a feedback. So my biggest challenge typically is people just don't understand what brain training is. When families come in or when individuals come in to get assessed, go through the brain skills assessment, we actually run them through a few brain training exercises so they understand what it is we do. Even when I sit down with parents and we're going through their child's results, I'll run parents through some brain training exercises just so they understand what we do.
Do you let them know?
Oh, yeah, I do. I do let them know. Well, the father who came in today, I had run the child through some training last week during the assessment, and mom got to see it, and so she wanted dad to come in and be part of the results. And so I told him, I said, well, you get to be the student. And he laughed. He goes, oh, no one told me that. And I go, that was not in the brochure for you, was it? But when we do that, they understand we're not going to sit and help with spelling. We're not going to sit and help with math. We really are focused on strengthening those weaker cognitive skills so that learning becomes easier, thinking becomes faster, and memory becomes better. The challenges that students have will vary. I always will tell parents or any student that when they first start, you're going to be a little more tired. It's kind of like if you went into the gym and you hadn't been in the gym in 5 years and you went and did an hour workout, how are you going to feel the next morning?
I'd be done in 20 minutes.
Tired, right? Right. So when we first start with brain training, it doesn't hurt, but people tend to be a little more exhausted. So I'm like, get a little bit more sleep, hydrate, eat a little bit more protein. That's going to help you. But within a week to 2 weeks, they're bounced back and they're ready to go, and they don't have the same exhaustion. For somebody who has had a traumatic brain injury, that is a whole different story because they have been, we don't typically work with someone right after a brain injury. I mean, the brain is still swollen. We want it to come back to a normal size. They're going through all other kinds of therapy that their doctors want them to do. Once they've been medically released, that's really when we can step in and then help put the icing on the cake or the cherry on the top for them. Usually when they have been medically discharged, they're still not functioning to where they want to be. I mean, we have a lady who's going through a program right now who was in a massive car accident September 1st of 23. She was turning left into a parking lot. Somebody ran a red light and T-boned her, and it knocked her out. I mean, her Apple Watch called 911 along with a lot of witnesses. But she was medically released December 4th of last year, and she still was struggling in her daily life. She was still having a hard time memorizing anything. She was still having a hard time, even when she talked, you could hear the cadence of her voice was just different. And she's getting ready to graduate a program with us. And we have a video of her when she first started our program. And we have a video of her just a couple of weeks ago. And when you compare the two, they're just completely different. So where children, we may have to, when they're starting a program, their challenges might be they're nervous, they're scared, they're beat up, and so they're hesitant to believe that they can achieve anything. And so if let's say they're starting at a certain level, we start below the level that they are at, because then those exercises are easy for them, and they
kind
can
of to build the confidence.
Kind of to build that
right.
confidence. Just simply like saying, "Tell me your ABCs," well, then they can whip through those really quickly. Or we have this color arrow board, and we're like, "Just tell me the colors of the arrows," and they can whip through that really quickly. And then we pass them on a level, and all of a sudden they're like, "I can do this," Well, then when it starts getting harder, they've already bought in. They're already deep into this, that I can do this, and we keep getting it harder. If, let's say we really want them to graduate at a level 8, we push them to a 9 or 10 so that they're above their grade level. If they're functioning at a 7-year-old and they're 8 years old, we want them functioning at a 9 or 10-year-old so that they go back into school and things seem a little bit easier for them. So with everybody, it's just slightly different on what their challenge is going to be. If we're working with somebody with early stages of dementia, we have to approach their exercises slightly different. The directions we give them is slightly different than we give somebody who's had multiple concussions. So it just all depends on the individual and what their cognitive skills look like as to the challenges they're going to face.
Right. The company is LearningRx. Just think learning prescription. And if you're listening audio, if you're in the car, I find it funny how, Kevin, you said at the beginning, I just thought it was kind of a touring thing. I think when you say that not a lot of people know exactly what we do, that's exactly it. Is that it's a lot more than just educational therapy or, stuff like that. It's actually building confidence. As you said, it helps out in sports. It helps out in other areas of life.
Yep.
You do a lot when it comes to brain injuries, and you mentioned that before. Just out of curiosity, so someone does get a brain injury, say from a car accident, just like how they'd have to go through physical therapy, is this something that insurance could cover when it comes to cognitive therapy?
So it's really interesting. So interestingly enough, there are insurance codes for cognitive therapy.
There are. Okay.
They exist. I have them. Ironically, insurances believe that this is still an emerging market and that there's not enough data out there to substantiate. Really? Yes. And why I find that so funny is because LearningRx has been around. I mean, they've been franchising their system for over 20 years. They've had their research department for over 10 years. They would be the epitome to hand over whatever information an insurance company would want, because everything we do is scientifically backed. We have over 40 peer-reviewed scientific studies that have been published for LearningRx, from ADHD to dyslexia to autism to mild cognitive impairment to brain injuries. In fact, LearningRx at one point in time worked with soldiers out of Fort Carson to demonstrate that soldiers that were about to be discharged on disability went through a program, and I believe were either promoted through the military or were honorably discharged and went on to have successful careers in society. So why insurance doesn't pay for this outright, I don't know. There has been pockets of success where if someone had a diagnosis, possibly they would be reimbursed by an insurance company. We are LearningRx and Highlands Ranch. We have an NPI number now, and we are heavily pursuing how to become a vendor, possibly, so insurance companies recognize that this is an important factor. I mean, it can help give somebody their life back, truly, especially someone with a traumatic brain brain injury. We are also pursuing becoming an approved vendor for Medicaid. We've had one student go through our program where a Medicaid waiver paid for their entire program. And so Medicaid has a lot of different programs for children. They have a program for elderly, blind, disabled, and they have a program for brain injury in the state of Colorado. And so we are trying to heavily pursue how do we get approved as a vendor, because that just helps more people, right?
Mm-hmm. I can even see like health insurance for fighting dementia, fighting Alzheimer's, trying to slow it down the process, where it could be very beneficial to the health insurance company.
It really, I mean, it's all, I mean, Kaiser's a really good one where Kaiser's all about being proactive and not reactive.
Exactly.
You know, they're all about preventative care, right? And Kaiser's, you know, they probably do it better than anybody out there, really, on preventative care. And so if insurance companies, I think, could focus on preventative care, how much money could they save versus reactive care? Probably a lot.
Right. That's just insurance being insurance.
It's insurance being insurance. That's exactly it. And they're, you know, they're hard to fight, truly.
Yeah.
We've, like I said, across the country, LearningRx, different franchise owners have had some success with insurance helping or Medicaid helping. But we're still working really hard to make this more well-known. And so that I would love for insurance to pay for this for people. I would love to become a Medicaid provider so that we can help more people, because we absolutely, no doubt, understand the benefits of this program.
Right. Exactly. Go for it.
What can you tell us about the Brainy Moms?
The Brainy Moms. Oh, wow. Thank you for asking about that. Brainy Moms is a podcast. Our head researcher, Dr. Amy Moore, is the one who, she has different guests on at all times. I mean, a lot of different people are on that show. Dr. Jody Jedlicka is on there. Terry Miller, Sandy Zamalis. She's actually a franchise owner back east. And so it just helps. It's a great podcast for anybody, but it really is focused on moms who have kids who struggle, and direction and guidance. It's a wonderful program. It's an absolute, if anybody hasn't heard about it, I would say tune in, because they give a lot of great information on that podcast.
Where can you find it? Is it on Spotify?
I think it's on everything. Spotify, podcasts. I mean, it's been around quite a long time, so I think you can find it just about on anything.
The Brainy Moms. Look for it. Interesting.
I have a question when it comes to, so you mentioned earlier, Kevin, like the ADD era, the ADHD era. I was diagnosed both back in the day when they really didn't understand what's going on. You've stated you are not a doctor. In your opinion, though, I'm under the opinion that a lot of times people, and especially kids, can be easily misdiagnosed for like ADD, ADHD, taking medication when really they just need something like this, some cognitive training. Again, I'm not a doctor. However, I can think of a student who came to us. She was 13 years old, and she had a diagnosis of ADHD, and she had been on medications for it and had gone off medications, and she was struggling in school, super frustrated. And so mom and dad came in, and stepdad was involved too. And we did her initial assessment, and her attention score, her cognitive score, was actually rather high. It was actually in over the 80th percentile. Oh. And so, again, I'm like, I'm not a doctor, but when her attention cognitive skills that high, I would lead me to believe that maybe this isn't the challenge. It still could be. Again, they're looking at it from a whole different perspective than I am. But her auditory processing was very low. Her auditory memory was very low, and her short-term memory, as well as her processing speed, was very low. So she tried hard to pay attention to something. But if mom or dad, and I typically will tell parents, if you tell the child, go clean up your room, take out the trash, and empty the dishwasher, the only thing they heard was go clean up your room. So it can come across that they're not paying attention. It can come across as being defiant or laziness, when in reality, the brain never heard
the last part of that anyway. If you want to be successful, tell her to go clean her room. When she's done, come back. Okay, can you take out the trash? She's done. Now please empty the dishwasher. Give her instructions step by step. And we often find too, for people who are visual processing and visual memory are very high, well then put it in writing for her. My daughter, I wish we would have known about LearningRx when our youngest daughter was going through school, because we had a lot of the same challenges with her. And we paid for tutoring for 3 years for her. And maybe she got better on a test, or maybe she did better on a project, but she really struggled and she hated school and had multiple missing assignments, multiple fights in our home. And when she was 19, when we opened LearningRx and we did her assessment, and it's exactly what we found. Her auditory processing was low, her auditory memory, her short-term memory, but her visual processing and visual memory were off the charts. They were up in the 90th percentile. So anything she saw, she caught on the very first try and could run with it. And I thought, wow, her school years would have been completely different had I known it. And she never got diagnosed with ADHD, but she had a lot of those tendencies, and her attention, even her attention cognitive skill was a little lower than what it should have been. And so it was amazing the difference in her after brain training. And she became one of our brain trainers. And I always tell people, if you are a brain trainer, you're also exercising your brain. And most of the time you're doing it upside down when you're working with someone face to face, because you have the different exercises in front of them, and you have to make sure they're doing them correctly. So you're doing it upside down as a trainer, so you have an additional challenge on top of it.
So your brain's getting even bigger.
It gets even bigger. That's right.
What are some different things we can do just on our own to maintain our cognitive skills?
So, like I said before, it's an entire lifestyle program.
Right, so that comes down to the diet, the good sleep.
Nutrition, hydration, sleep, getting oxygenated blood to the brain, socialization, and then, of course, cognitive exercise and brain training. What I do get asked is people will say, well, I play Sudoku on my phone. Am I exercising my brain? And I go, well, yes and no. Okay. So if you went into a gym 5 days a week, you went in, you did your bicep curls and walked out, are you exercising your body?
Right.
Well, yes and no. You're exercising your biceps, you're just not exercising anything else. So when people play games on their phones or on their tablets or computers, it's not that it's a bad thing. It is exercising the brain. They're just not exercising the entire brain.
Okay.
The other thing, like I've heard, working with dementia as much as I have, I've heard a daughter say, well, my dad played crossword puzzles his whole life and still got dementia.
I've heard that a lot too.
Yeah.
Crossword, yeah.
Yeah. So I go, well, here's the thing is that when we are doing crossword puzzles or word finds or putting together puzzles or Sudoku or Tetris or whatever it is, we tend to gravitate to what we like and what we enjoy. So basically what we're doing is we're exercising the strongest part of our brains. That's why we enjoy it. That's why we like it. So we're not doing anything to the weak parts. So the strong gets stronger, but the weak continue to get weaker. And that's why we hear, oh, my dad did crosswords all his life and got dementia. Well, because he just kept exercising the stronger part of his brain, and the weaker part just kept getting weaker. So I really encourage people to get a cognitive assessment, get a brain skills assessment, because you can play all the Sudoku you want. You can do all those things, but if all you're doing is focusing on the stronger part of the brain, that's going to be problematic. Kind of like if a physical therapist or your personal trainer, if you were going in and only focusing on the strongest part of your body and never doing anything about the weaker part of the muscles, well, those muscles will just continue to get weaker on you. And you're going to have a problem.
That's why after the test, you focus in on the weaker parts to build those up.
Correct.
How does this cross or correlate when it comes to different learning styles? Because you have, like auditory, visual learners, what is it, kinesthetic learners, all of that.
It can. A lot of times people we all as human beings, we tend to gravitate to our stronger parts of our, brain.
So that's kind of choosing the stronger part.
Kind of. I mean, people who, you'll hear people who say they're left brain or right brain.
Right.
Well, the difference in that really is it's more in the parietal lobe, which is the top part of the brain. The left side of the brain really focuses on language and math and those really academic skills, where the right side of the brain is really the creative, the music. So musicians really are stronger in the right side of their brain, probably more so than they are in the left side of their brain, where engineers are probably stronger in the left side of their brain than they are in the right side of their brain. So that's where that comes from. What I find is I see more people who are stronger in visual processing and visual memory than I do in auditory processing or auditory memory. So they rely more on their visual skills.
Right. I've heard also a lot of musicians are strong math.
Yeah, I think math is involved in music.
Oh, yeah.
So I think they go together, but I don't know why. I mean, I'm a musician. I'm not that great at math.
Right.
Bit like physics. Physics wouldn't be your thing.
I mean, I can count, and I know what a 4/4 or 16ths are, but I mean, yeah, you put a problem in front of me, and I'm
Put your
scratching
algebra
my
book
head.
in front of you.
Yeah.
Shouldn't do that.
Yeah.
Well, and I can tell people, when I do warm-up exercises with folks, or when people say, well, what could I do? And I'm like, well, how about saying, try and see how fast you can say the alphabet forward to a metronome. You do it at every beat. They're doing it at every other beat on a metronome. Or how can you say the alphabet backwards, Or can you start and do end to end? Can you go A, Z, B, Y, C, X, D, W? I mean, can you go end to end and come in, or can you go start in the middle and go out? Or take words and, you can, like the word stop. Can you spell it forward? Sure. S-T-O-P. Can you spell it backward? Sure. P-O-T-S. Can you put the letters in alphabetical order? Right. O-P-S-T. So we actually start kids, students at 4-letter words, and we'll get them all the way to 12-letter words to spell them forward and backward and put them in alphabetical order. Those are really kind of simple things people could do every day, and they're challenging.
Yeah.
They're very challenging when I start saying, well, just say the alphabet backwards, say the alphabet end to end, and they go, are you kidding? And we joke, like when we go run people through things, I'll say, well, what is the last name of the first U.S. president? Well, most people can tell me that answer. Washington. Okay, we'll spell his last name backwards. That's going to take a minute.
That's going to take a minute.
That's
exactly.
going to take a minute. Mm-hmm. So we get people who can do that kind of stuff very quickly.
You were talking to us before this interview started, and LearningRx opened something up where you can even help, because we have listeners. Most of our listeners are here in Colorado, especially in the Denver Tech Center, but we also have listeners outside of Colorado, and there's a way where you can even help assess and train people remotely.
Yes. So LearningRx is worldwide. And so I always encourage somebody, if there's a LearningRx close to them, please go to a LearningRx close to them.
Everything's better in person.
Everything's better in person. Yeah. And we have some amazing franchise owners across the world. I know a lot of them in Canada, in the United States. However, I do know, there is not a LearningRx in Salt Lake City. There is not a LearningRx in Miami. There is not a LearningRx in Seattle. So individuals there, they can always call the corporate office. We have a national program, and the corporate office can assign them to a center who's is a national provider. If somebody, like I currently have a student who went through our program, and her aunt lives in Montana. If I have a student who has a personal connection to somebody outside of the state of Colorado, then yes, we can step in and help and do assessments virtually, and we can train virtually. LearningRx, their virtual program rolled out 3 weeks before COVID hit. And
perfect timing.
Perfect timing,
right
yes,
there.
absolutely perfect timing. So they went and trained all of their franchises how to train virtually. And the benefit that came out of that was they were able to compare their data on, does a virtual training give as good of results as somebody who does it face-to-face? And we found that it does. So whether we're training virtually or whether we're training face-to-face, we can actually get some really pretty solid results.
Wow.
And also something you mentioned off there, to have that personal, the face-to-face is kind of fun, because every now and then you'll just give a high five for some reason.
It's great for kids, because when they're sitting across from the table and they get something, they're so excited. We're giving them a high five, and we're getting up and dancing and celebrating with them, and they're so excited about it. It's harder to do virtually. Right. We can kind of do it, but it's probably not the same feeling. It's not the same. It's not the same. The virtual training comes in handy, though. We've had students as far east as Watkins, and I've had students as far west as Evergreen. I have had students as far north as Thornton, and I've had students come from Castle Rock. So virtual, it's hard for a parent or even an adult to get to our center 3 times a week. That we really encourage 3 times a week for an hour when we're doing this. And so 3 times a week to try to get through Denver traffic can be, miserable. Or even somebody who may live in Highlands Ranch and it's a bad snow day, So I like the fact that we can offer, all virtual training, all in face, or a hybrid of the two.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a great option.
I don't know about you, Kev, but I'm more like Putty on Seinfeld. High five.
Yeah.
High five. They need to come back.
High five.
Exactly. Well, Kathi, I know. I mean, I could talk probably with you for hours on this. I mean, I went for psychology in college and everything like that, and now I do this for a living. So, just got to show you out there. But I want to make sure anything main points that you want to say that we didn't cover in this interview.
People who've gone through our program will absolutely say everybody should go through it. Anybody could benefit from this. And what I'll say is that if someone's too young, we can't get them to focus to train. So while we jokingly say any brain at any age, kids who are too young aren't going to be able to focus. And there are some kids who, if they have a hard time with attention, they may need to go through a different type of therapy before we can help them too. So we always want to be honest with families. Also, I mean, for people who are too far down a dementia road, we are not going to be able to step in and help them. Right. There are even things, whenever someone comes to me and says, do you think this will help? I always start with and say, I don't know. Let's start with the brain skill assessment and let's find out where the strengths and weaknesses of the brain are first. And then we can decide, what that looks like. We have a student right now whose dad asked me that question. The father went through our program and he has a daughter who's in her early 30s, autistic, but functions at a 4.5-year-old. And when she came in, we're like, wow, we really don't know. And that's where I have the benefit of just talking to our corporate office and say, you guys see a lot more than I do. Is this something we could do? Is this something we can help with? So they gave me a lot of tips and guidance, and we put her through the program. She's almost done. And she went from functioning about a 4.5-year-old to, they tell me now she takes initiative to do things at home. She gets herself dressed appropriately in the morning. A couple of weeks ago, she got all of her laundry out of the dryer, folded it, and put it away appropriately. I mean, while that seems simple exercises for you or I, that's huge in her world and huge for mom and dad.
Right.
So if anyone's even saying, I don't know if this would benefit me, and they call me, I'll probably say the same thing. I don't know. In certain circumstances, it all starts with a brain skill assessment. So please come in, let's get a brain skill assessment done, and let's just find out what the strengths and weaknesses are. And from there, I can make a recommendation on what I think is best for you.
And I feel like this could be helpful for a wide range of people. I mean, who doesn't want to think better? Who doesn't want to respond better? You mentioned age, something like if it's too young. When assessing if someone is too young, is that an age thing or is that a cognitive ability thing?
It's more of an age thing because kids who are young, we have to get them to be able to sit and pay attention for a full hour, to do the exercises. With some kids, we may start off with 30 minutes and then build up to an hour. I've done that with traumatic brain injuries. We started with 30 minutes and built to an hour. I've done it with a lady who had a stroke. We started with 30 minutes and built up. So we can build up to it, but sometimes kids who are a little younger have a difficult time sitting still for a full hour.
I still do, yeah.
So and I tell parents, it really all depends on a child too. I mean, I've had some teenagers who have difficulty sitting there for an entire hour. So we always say, let me meet them. Let's go through and let me talk to them. Let me see if they'll pay attention and follow directions, and then I'll make a recommendation for you. So we don't ever say no to anybody, but we don't always say yes to everybody.
Right. There's an order to things.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, your website is very informative. There's the main one, and then there's the Highlands Ranch specific one at learningrx.com/Highlands-Ranch. You're at 9090 Ridgeline Boulevard in Highlands Ranch. Phone number is 303-955-2959. There's even some tutorials or what do you call it? Or just some of your clients on here with some videos. So there's like a young kid who has ADHD. There's also a guy who had a stroke who went through the program. So it's pretty interesting. I would go through this website if you're interested.
Yeah, there's a lot of testimonials. I think the most famous one that LearningRx has is a gentleman in Texas whose family owned over 300 convenience stores. Dad was president. He was vice president. He was married with 2 young kids, and his wife didn't like him riding a motorcycle. And so he sold it. A new owner was coming to pick it up on Monday. Dad said, let's go out for one last ride on Sunday. He left without his helmet. He was hit. He was thrown a pretty good distance. He broke his pelvis in 3 places. He was in a coma for over 70 days. He went through 14 surgeries. Between hospitals and rehabs, he was in a medical setting for about 11 and a half months. They didn't think he would survive. Everyone was shocked when he walked out. And a couple of years later, he was still functioning at a toddler, a child's age. And so he went through a very intense LearningRx program in Texas. And when he finished, he went back to his vice president job in his family company. When you see the video of this gentleman, it is mind-blowing that this is the same guy. And I mean, they have story after story after story, from kids who struggled to strokes to traumatic brain injuries. It's amazing what LearningRx offers.
It is a really amazing thing. I'm very impressed. Thank you so much for coming in and sharing this with us.
You're very welcome. Yeah. What I will tell people, we're running a special on the brain skill assessment because we think it's so important. So for the next couple of months, the first 10 people who call and sign up for a brain skill assessment will get it at $99. We normally charge $299 for this, and so it's quite the deal to be able to come in and get the brain skill assessment and the training and the results for a very discounted price right now.
Okay, and that's right now, or that's when?
It's going to run.
10.
It's the first 10 throughout the rest of the show. The first 10 in October, the first 10 in November, the first 10 in December, and if this becomes a huge success, we'll run it into first quarter of 26.
Well, we wish you all the best.
That's how important we think this is.
Yeah, and I can see that. I do too. Gosh, I don't know. I had something. I had a thought, and I just lost it.
Would you like to come in and get a brain skill? I'll leave my card before I go.
There you go.
Right. Something that can benefit everyone.
Exactly. If you did just kind of catch the end of this, please rewatch it. It's going to be on our social media platforms for a month, of course, on YouTube forever. And just absolutely amazing. And I would love to watch that video of that gentleman, that vice president that you were.
I'll get it sent to you.
That would be great. I find that stuff very fascinating.
Yeah, I'll send you a couple of videos.
All right, excellent. Well, okay. Kathi, thank you very much for coming in.
Thank you for having me. This has been a lot of fun.
Good.
Yeah, definitely. No problem. Kevin, what do we got coming up on K4CO tonight?
Tonight at 7 o'clock, we have All Colorado only, I should say, which is all Colorado artists. I don't have my notes in front of me. I should have this memorized anyway. And then at 9 p.m. is the Tuesday night edition of
Kind of Vague
Radio with Andrew and Rob. And then we rerun that at 2 a.m. as well. And then we're back at it tomorrow. Another busy day tomorrow, Josh. Right? A couple of interviews, and I won't be here, but...
Very busy week. We've been very busy lately.
And it's only Tuesday.
Exactly. Thank you very much for tuning in, everybody. Check it out, LearningRx, and it's learningrx.com/Highlands-Ranch, specifically to reach Kathi Miracle, 303-955-2959. You guys take care and have an amazing Tuesday night.